Oh, it's you. I was just reading a joke book.
Ah, Jesus. I just made a video on one of you fucking Dunning-Kruger goddamn socialists. Oh well, let's get you out of the way.
Fuck that. So today I wanted to respond to a certain video that I saw by a group called Learn Liberty. They're on the YouTubes. Maybe you've seen them? Hopefully not. There's some sort of libertarian propaganda machine that basically espouses a system of pro-markets, pro the rich elite, anti-working class, anti-poor.
You can tell when they poison the well with identity politics before they even introduce the argument that they are really fucking desperate. But if you really want to go there, Cupcake, freeing the market allows people to make more money because they earn more due to less regulations, and they have to spend less due to competition and innovation created by the market. The reason for this being the case is because a system where all ownership is private is one where everyone has a direct incentive to not only associate, but to improve working conditions and commodities as a means of appealing to customers and laborers. In any other system, any incentive is non-existent, since in a socialist society, you pay for all of the commodities regardless of if you use them or not, or in the current corporatist society we have, any and all incentive is gone because of the so-called safety nets created by the government, and the market can't freely compete because of regulations, meaning that the natural conclusion of the free market, that being that costs and the need for labor are reduced while living standards and the quality of commodities are greatly increased. So, if anyone here is an enemy of the poor and the working class, it's you.
Their main theme being just shut up, be quiet, and let the rich people rule everything and you'll be fine.
Mr. Strawman, give me a break!
That seems to be their main modus operandi, shall we say.
There is no video in which they've ever said that, no video in which they've ever argued that position. You're simply pulling a bunch of identity politics bullshit directly out of your ass.
Yeah, and this particular video that I'm responding to is called Are the Poor Getting Poorer? Okay, so let's watch this video.
One often heard contemporary economic myth is that the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. Like any myth, there is a nugget of truth to this. For example, if we look at the data, the top 20% of income earners today do have a larger share of national income than they did in the past, and the bottom 20% of income earners do have a smaller share of national income than they had in the past.
So, right off the bat, we've got a problem. This asshole has gone and decided to use the top 20% versus the bottom 20%. Why has he done this? Well, it's a classic propaganda trick.
Rather ironically, by constantly trying to smear Learn Liberty and using identity politics, you yourself are engaging in the use of propaganda tactics. I'm beginning to detect a theme here with his mentality. Are you?
You see, no one in their right minds, and certainly no one who knows anything about inequality.
Why not? Oh, well, of course. Because no true person who knows about inequality would. Of course. Totally valid supporting reason, which absolutely has explanatory power behind it.
Would choose the top 20% of the population of the United States. That's about 50 million people, okay? I don't think you, or I don't think anyone out there would consider 50 million people in the United States to be among the elite or the richest.
Well, now you yourself are completely misrepresenting the argument. The reason that this figure was presented in this video is because this was a response to the progressive argument made by people like Bernie Sanders, whose tax codes would target the top 20% of all income earners. And just for reference, the top 20% of income earners in the United States make roughly $175,000 a year, which, considering that socialists never give a concise precise answer as to what is too much money, because, their arguments are based entirely on emotions over facts. There is nothing which can exclude the presented figure as being invalid, since there is no explanation given in the first place for why it has to be any other figure.
So why has he done? He's done it to soften the numbers. You see, if you include a large part of the population who would be considered, say, middle class into the upper class, it sort of balances it out and makes it look as if the growth hasn't been particularly huge.
Well, I don't know about you, but $175,000 a year does not sound very middle class to me. Whether this point was from pure ignorance, from a lack of actual research on the topic he's discussing, or blatant lies, one thing is for sure. The point that Learn Liberty presented was exactly the same as if you would have presented it. The majority of the population owns a minority of the wealth, while a minority of the population has a higher wealth concentration. Of course, trying to use this to argue that the wealthy are getting wealthier and the poor are getting poorer is absolute nonsense, since it's completely unrelated to the premise entirely. Income distribution and wealth concentration are entirely dependent on career paths individuals choose or the choices individuals make with their own money.
When in fact, if you do it the way any other economist would do it, and choose the top 1% or even the top 10%, or actually as most economists do, or who have realized this, that's the top 0.1% who've seen the most growth, what you'll see is a huge jump in inequality. But yeah, this is a propaganda trick. Don't fall for it, okay?
Indeed, using income inequality to claim that poor people are making less money while wealthy people are making more is nothing more than nonsensical propaganda. Glad we see eye to eye on that one.
Past. There's two problems with that data. First of all, that data doesn't tell us anything about the absolute condition of the poor. Just because one has a smaller share of income doesn't mean that one is absolutely poor. So for example, it could be the case that even though poor Americans have a smaller share of national income, their absolute income is higher. If I asked you, would you rather have a sixth of a pizza or a ninth of a pizza, your answer might depend on how big the pizza is. And having 1/9 of a pizza might be better if the pizza was much larger than the one of which you'd have 1/6. The real income of poor Americans today is higher than it used to be, even though their share of total income is somewhat lower.
Okay, this is the part of the argument that really annoys me, because I've heard this before. Even the wonderful John Green, who I admire so much, has made this terrible argument.
Okay, so think of the economy as a pizza. The richest people get the largest portion of that pizza, and the poorest people get very little of it. In fact, in the US, the poorest 40% of Americans get less than 0.3% of the pizza. That's problematic, don't get me wrong, but the cool thing about capitalism is that thanks to innovation and competition, over time, the overall size of the pizza increases. So even if your percentage slice of the pie doesn't increase, you get more pizza. This is ultimately why you probably live in a place with a refrigerator and your great-grandparents probably didn't.
What they're essentially saying is that any system of government or any system of rule can be justified as long as the standard of living is slowly increasing.
What? No, absolutely not. Where the fuck did you even get that? What they are saying is that the production of capital represented as a slice of pie is not an accurate model because the pie slice model of capital distribution, also known as wage fund theory, starts from the base assumption that the amount of capital in the economy is a static figure, which of course is not true since the amount of capital is constantly expanding due to production. This being the case, while the share of wealth that a certain group of people may accumulate gets smaller compared to another group in the economy, that doesn't really matter because the economy is not a zero-sum game. So in other words, it doesn't matter because the amount of capital in the economy is also expanding, meaning that they are not losing any wealth.
Now, I happen to think that's bull, because using that argument you could very easily justify slavery.
But no one ever made that argument, you fucking potato. What, did you just not understand what they were saying, so to fill in the gap you interpreted it with the closest thing you could wrap your head around? Here's a good tip. If you don't understand a point that's coming from a position you don't agree with, you don't have to respond to it, and as a matter of fact, it would be wise not to. because this is what happens when you respond, though you clearly don't have a basic idea of what your dissenters are talking about.
I mean, to be a slave in 1860 was a lot better than to be a slave in 1760. Is that an argument for slavery? Of course it's not. No one would say that just because a slave's life is better in 1860 than it was in 1760, that it's fine for him to be a slave. No one would argue that. You'd have to be rotten and insane to argue it. John Green, for example, says that just because we have fridges now and live in a house, most people have a house or a fridge or a TV, that justifies the massive inequality. Well, a slave in 1860 would have had a hut, a little shelter, a hut, maybe some clothes that he wouldn't have had in 1760. Does that justify slavery, Mr. Green?
Literally no one ever said anything about slavery, and your entire comparison to slavery is based on a straw man, unless you're trying to compare laborers to slaves, and I don't know if you are, so I'm not going to respond to that point, but if you are, that easily puts this video in the top 5 dumbest videos I've ever responded to.
Of course you wouldn't say it does, because it doesn't. And even not even taking slavery, what about the Soviet Union? People living in the Soviet Union were much better than they were living under the Tsarist Russia.
I don't know about that. The Soviet Union's body count and quality of life would beg to differ.
Literacy rates shot up, poverty fell.
Oh my god, did you just say the poverty rate went down in the Soviet Union? I mean, holy shit, do I even need to comment on that? Most of the people in the Soviet Union who died because of the famines caused by the centrally planned model's inability to allocate resources.
Industrialization took off. I mean, does that justify the Soviet Union? Again, of course not. Okay? So can we just forget this shitty argument? It's a terrible, rotten argument that can justify anything from slavery to the Nazis or the Soviet Union just by simply saying that because you're getting slightly richer each year, then it doesn't matter. Everything's fine. No, it's terrible. Okay? Fuck off.
One set of data shows that between 1979 and 1988, 86% of households that were poor in 1979 were no longer poor in 1988. A second set of data from the University of Michigan shows that of households that were poor in 1975, over 95% of them were no longer poor by 1991. One of the most important things to understand when we talk about the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer is this idea of income mobility.
Okay, now we're getting into really sketchy territory. And, as if to redeem himself, I summoned John Green to talk about it.
Right, but anyway, 42% of American men raised in the bottom 20% of incomes stay there.
That is an absolute lie. Over half of all people who are in the poorest income range will not stay in that range. Income mobility increases even further when you introduce absolute mobility by family income quintile. So it does indeed appear that there is a great deal of income mobility in the US, which proves that accumulated wealth is not a result of any distinctions by class, but rather the choices individuals make with their own finances.
In fact, by almost any measure, whether you are born rich or poor in the United States is a better indicator of whether you will end up rich or poor than it is in Canada or Europe or any country in the developed world.
Are you just pulling this shit out of your ass? Well, considering that the source video has no citation for this claim, I'd say yes.
When we talk about socioeconomic mobility and equality of opportunity in the 21st century, we're not really talking about the American dream. We're talking about the Danish dream.
Because of the massive wealth redistribution, children in Denmark are less likely to achieve income mobility. Their school system sucks because of how much the government is involved. Specifically, it has a higher amount of dropouts, and the higher minimum wage has killed most of the market and has made it so only bigger monopolies can exist. Sorry to intrude on your progressive Scandinavia philia jerk session, but it's a fantasy, and we are talking about reality.
Thank you, John, for that statement. I love you. You're awesome. Yeah, basically by any standard definition that I've been able to discover, income mobility in the United States is pretty terrible. Probably the lowest from what I've been able to see from the figures in the developed world.
You've either done absolutely no research or you're bold-faced lying.
And this is in spite, I should say, of the United States' unique advantage. What's its unique advantage? Well, it's the fact that it has a great amount of immigration into the system. You see, immigrants usually come into the United States from poor countries, and thus have virtually nothing to their names, they then can get a job and move up the income bracket. That means that can help skew the figures. It makes it look as if people from the poor are moving up in the United States, when in reality it's people who are starting with nothing and ending with a tiny bit more.
What is this? Making shit up the video? What does this have to do with the argument?
Which is what you'd expect in a growing economy. Why people born poor in the United States are likely to stay there, and thus immigration actually helps to skew the figures to make it look like the United States is more meritocratic than it actually is.
People who start with nothing move up. That's what the study showed. Immigration status has nothing to do with it. So way to completely just shove your foot in your mouth. Aside from the fact that, the facts contradict your statement, if immigrants coming from foreign countries which are poor are able to move up through the middle upper classes, that proves that all of your arguments are wrong and all of my counters are correct.
And in fact, if we look at that data comparing 1975 and 1991, what we find is that the average income gain for rich households over that period was just about $4,000, but the average gain for poor households over that period, $28,000.
I also had a look at his data that he links to here, and I can only say that it's sketchy at best. For one thing, it only measures 10 years of economic activity, which anyone who knows anything about economics would tell you is a blink of an eye.
Okay, I'm sure you've noticed this because he's used that exact same phrase like 4 times so far. Anyone who knows anything. This is a dishonest argumentative tactic known as weasel words. Essentially, he doesn't have any citations or base for his claim, so what he's doing to get around that is to make a general statement which appears to confirm that he has a base for his claim, when in actuality he's providing no base or citation. So, no one specifically said that, no reason is given as to why that's the case. Honestly, there's quite a bit more of the video left, but I'm not sure how much more I'm going to go through, because essentially the rest of the video is nothing but bullshit like this. And frankly, I don't know about you guys, but I find Dunning-Krugers to be the most irritating kind of people.
I'm always amazed by the amount of people who look at only a few years or even just a decade of economic history and try to draw massive conclusions from it. So I'm going to do the opposite. Here's my data. This is from 100 years of economic activity. This is a graph showing the share of the top 1% in several rich countries over the past 100 years.
Okay, and? No, seriously, how does this prove that the economy isn't doing well and that the middle class and poor people are not doing well?
The United States is the black line with little triangles on it, in case you're confused. What we see is that in all countries, we witness a huge fall in the 1%'s income as a result of World War I, then the Great Depression, and especially after World War II and its subsequent culture of imposing high taxes on the wealthy. This is in the 50s and 60s and 70s.
People having more of their money stolen from them is a good thing because class identity politics. Fuck off, you're absolutely disgusting.
Incidentally, this is also when the world and the United States saw its fastest growth, in all of human history, I should say.
Holy shit. There are so many hidden variables other than income tax rate. Have you ever read statistics before, kid? What products were coming out at the time? How did trade regulations look? How did the stock market look? There. I didn't even script that. I literally, off the top of my head, just came up with 3 things which influence the market greater than income tax rate, which you're not even taking into consideration. And even the idea that the tax rate was higher than ever is false when you take Hauser's law into account. After applying tax revenue as a percentage of the GDP, you'll find that total tax rates were the lowest in history. And in fact, if you take tax write-offs into account, the government really wasn't collecting that much money from taxation at all. But even aside, the fact that you think the government is entitled to steal 90% or more of people's income is absolutely absurd.
But that's for another day. What we also see is that in the United States in 1980, the 1% took 8% of national income. That is, for every dollar generated from labor in...
Money is not generated from labor because value is not based on labor. Value is derived from marginal utility, which means that there is no objective value.
In the economy, but 8 cents of it went to the 1%, okay? 8 times what you'd expect in a completely equal economy.
Alright, well, aside from the fact that the point being made here is literally no different than what was said by Learn Liberty, what you want is not equality. What you want is equality of outcome. There's a big difference between those two. Equality allows everyone to have an equal chance at doing anything and receiving the results that they receive as a result of their own actions. Equality of outcome seeks to make everyone's outcome exactly the same, meaning that people who work with a labor field that has more demand but low supply will make the same as someone who is working in a labor field with high supply and very, very low demand. And for this to happen, the people who are at the lower end meet this equality at the direct expense of the people at the higher end, violating their rights in the process. You are literally advocating for a system of exploitation similar to the one that you claim exists right now, and we're supposed to be the enemies here.
This might sound bad, but by 2010, that had risen to nearly 18%. That shows no sign of slowing. I also just want to say a few other things about the data he's given us. Number one is that all its sources come from income tax data. Now, and as we all know that the rich never dodge their taxes, I mean, that would just be nuts to assume. Who would even think of such a thing? Not me, not this guy, not me.
Well, you didn't when you presented the 1950s tax statistics as an example of high income tax stimulating the economy, so no, you absolutely didn't.
Another thing I want to say about his data is that when you compare only 10 years, as he did between 1996 and 2007, I think it was, part of the problem is that you naturally encompass, there's usually a recession at least once every 10 years. And as we see from looking at my data and anyone's data, once there's a recession, there's usually a fall in inequality. Why? Because the rich have most of the wealth and they lose most of it whenever the economy tanks. They get it back pretty quickly, but they also lose it. This makes it look like there's been a huge drop in inequality in a very short period of time. But of course, it's really just an effect of having huge amounts of capital or money wiped off the stock market. So this can help explain why his figures between 1996 and 2007 showed a fall in inequality.
As you can see by your own graph, recession has no direct effect on the income of the top 10% of income earners with the decline of the economy. Also, why are you using the top 10% now, It's almost like this top whatever percent data point is nothing more than an arbitrary figure which doesn't have any consistent argumentative basis behind it other than to be used as a rhetorical device by knuckle-dragging progressives who want to steal more people's money.
Why? Because there was a major recession in 2002. And I'm sure if we looked at the data between 2006 and, say, 2014, say, we'd see a small drop, or maybe just a bit flatline. But of course, what's actually happened is it's gone like this. And if you look at the long-term data, what you see is a trend, which I showed you my graph before, and I'll show you again right now. The data goes straight up.
So in other words, way to BTFO your own argument. Honestly, what's even the point that you're trying to make with this video? The video is called Libertarianism Debunked Again, which, by the way, this is a laughable attempt to refute libertarianism, even by Marxist economist standards. But you're not even making a point against libertarianism. All you're doing is talking about income equality, which, all arguments for or against it aside, is not even related to the